The top 2 richest people have more wealth than 50% of Americans, the bottom 50 combined.
The financial services sector is a $114 trillion business. We're going through the largest wealth transfer in our nation's history right now. And by 2032, women will be the primary holders of wealth in this nation. It's interesting that I've always been on a life journey to eradicate poverty since I was little. I lost my father when I was 5 years old. And so my mom was a single mother that was like thrust back into the workplace. And my dad actually had a life insurance policy, but it was a small one and not enough for her to survive on. And she wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom. And so all of a sudden, we have no dad. My mom's back at work. We're in daycare. And at the time, daycare was not in my community. Anyways, everyone was a stay-at-home mom. We were the only family that didn't have a dad. And so I watched my mother struggle through this, and I was like, that's why I went into politics, because I was like, I want to do something that helps single moms succeed.
Hey, Tyree, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are very excited. I think it's been 3 years since I saw you last.
Yes.
I think I got to be the host on a fun panel with Marshall and David, and we really talked about financial independence and all that. So it's been a minute since just before COVID.
Yeah, actually, I think it was during COVID. Like COVID had just started, and we had a captive audience, everybody at home, and so we took advantage of the opportunity to talk about money, which is obviously something that has been on a lot of people's minds over the last 3 years.
Yes. Financial freedom is such a big topic today, but before we get into that, I do want to go back in time because there's something we learned about you, and I am so curious. It's been gnawing at me. I think it was 22 years ago, maybe. You were in a bar. Somebody offered to buy you a drink, and you said no. And today, he's now a partner of yours. So tell us and describe to me kind of the setting when Marshall Falk offered to buy you a beverage.
Oh boy, this is like a story I think that will never live down. I mean, everything about my friendship with Marshall feels like something out of a movie from the moment that I met him. So my best friend and I were at a bar that used to be called On Broadway in downtown San Diego. And I was like, we were I think I was underage, actually. I think I was like 20 using a fake ID. And guys would buy me drinks all the time, and then we would have to do what was called the courtesy talk, where you didn't want to be a jerk and just like accept the drink and not talk to them. Well, I kind of got fed up with it, and I was like, I don't want to just have to talk to people, so I'll just buy my own drink. Like, I don't need a guy to buy me a drink. And so I was at the bar, and a drink comes in front of me, and I was like, oh, I didn't order this. And the bartender said, oh, that gentleman at the end of the bar sent it down for you. And I was like, oh, yeah, just send it back. Like, I'm not interested. And the guy looks at me like, he's like, you got to take this drink, lady. And I'm like, no, weirdo. Like, why do I have to take this drink? And he's like, do you know who that is? And I was like, no. He said, that's Marshall Falk. And I said, who in the F is Marshall Falk? And he's like, oh my God, this guy was like, he's on the cover of Madden. He just won the Super Bowl. And, you got to take this drink. And I was like, oh, I definitely don't want it. Send it back. And so he sent the drink back, and Marshall was so cool. Like, he took it back. The bartender told him, he just looked, nodded his head. And then he came over to me and he said, no woman has ever sent a drink back. And I was like, well, I guess there's a first time for everything. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm Marshall. And I said, I'm Tyree. We chatted for a few minutes, and then he asked my phone number, and I was like, oh, no, thanks. I'm good. And he's like, can I give you mine? And I said, no, thanks. And he's like, I'm giving you my phone number. So I still have a register tape with Marshall's phone number on it, and that he wrote his number down and shoved it into my purse. And, as San Diego would have it, it's a small community. And so, we kept running into each other all these years. And now we're best friends, business partners. Like, we really have built a special relationship and together. So it's kind of a fun story. And now, incidentally, he owns the bar that we met at. So
that is a fun fact. You should actually put that phone number tape and frame it in the bar, but just cross out his number so everyone doesn't call him.
Right, I know. So we always joke about it. Now he's like, see, you should have just taken that drink from me years ago. Whenever he's like, I want to wring his neck, Not that that happens very often, but when I do, he's like, you should have just let me buy that drink, because then we probably wouldn't be friends now. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right.
Did you ever call him, or did you just run into him again in the future?
No, so I didn't call him. I didn't really know who he was. There was no Google. This was like 2000, So, I mean, there was, but not like it is today. And
Ask Jeeves or something?
Yeah, totally. Ask Jeeves. Yeah, you had to put everything in quotes with plus signs and equals, and like there was a whole formula to using Google, and it wasn't very effective even when you used it. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not really sure who this guy is. And my guy friends were like, who is it? And I pull out his number, and everybody freaked out. They were like, Marshall Falk, you've got to call him. I was like, no, I'm not calling this guy. So I put the number back in my purse, and I was just like, okay, whatever. And then turns out that my best friend, who I was with that night at the bar, her dad was caddying at a golf tournament 3 years later. And he ends up caddying for Marshall in Tahoe. And so Marshall gets in the golf cart, and John looked at him and was like, you probably don't remember this, but, my daughter's best friend met you at a club in San Diego, and she sent a drink back. And he was like, oh, Tyree? I'll never forget her. And so he just couldn't wait to tell me that story. I was like, oh, golly. So, then we just kept running into each other like over the years. And it wasn't until we both started doing a lot of work in the inner city communities, and we ended up sitting at the same table together. And so that's when I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, maybe there is a little more to you. So I shouldn't be so hard on you. And, he really was super persistent. And, we would have dinner maybe once a year over the years. And then we just got to be really, really good friends over maybe the last 10, 15 years. And he's my rock, now at this point. And so when he said, hey, let's go into business together, I was like, all right, like, let's see what this looks like. And so it's been, talk about trusting. It was kind of like blind faith. And I'm like, all right, why not? Like, let's try this. So you know what it's like to start a business. I was like, well, okay, sure. So, here we are. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey.
So describe for me that time or that period when you decided it was time to start this business. What were you doing before?
So I had been doing accountability coaching, so life coaching with people, really like performance coaching. I shouldn't even say life coaching, because usually I would work with people when they had a specific goal in mind. Like, I need to get my team here. I want to get here personally, whatever it is. And, because people always call me like the tough coach. So, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm fully aware of that.
You'll clearly say no to free drinks.
Free drinks and NFL legends, yep. So I'm like, oh, okay, that stuff doesn't really impress me. So, I had been doing that. I was loving it. And originally, actually, when Marshall talked to me, he was like, let's go. I need you to come in and coach my team. And so that's really where like the whole precipice was. It's kind of like, all right, let me come in and meet these people and see what's going on. And so I did, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, we're talking about financial literacy, and here I was, albeit a little on my high horse, thinking like, I got a business degree. Like, I got a, full ride to Georgetown for my MBA. Like, I got this, money, come on. And then when I started to learn more and more and more about it, and I got to take a deeper dive on my own finances, where I realized like, maybe I didn't really have it all together. Like, I thought that I did, but nobody had ever asked me some of these questions before. And so, sheepishly, I sat there with Marshall, and I was like, yeah, I totally know what that is. I went home, like, Googled it. I was like, I don't even know what some of this stuff is. And then I started to see what an epidemic it really is, that most people are not connected to their money at all. Pretty much every single person that I sit down with has no idea what the heck is happening in their financial world. Like, I got a 401k somewhere. I'm not really sure. Edward Jones, TD Ameritrade. I'm not somebody. I don't know.
I find it fascinating that, my oldest daughter, she's a senior in high school. They don't teach one drop of financial literacy in high school, middle school, anything. Nothing about stocks. You have to like take a special class for it. It's not even part of the curriculum. Something so vital, which is our individual financial literacy, which I find just dangerous, just for the sake of the civilization in the United States of America and our population. But when you said that same concept, which is we all think we do, we all think, it's money. I think I know. But then when you get asked like a specific question, you have to like literally Google it. And I find myself doing that same thing when I'm talking to financial experts where, I run businesses and I made money, and there's so many parts of financial literacy I just have no idea on. And I find it interesting that even someone like yourself would have to even Google some of those concepts. So what do you think, what was the idea that Marshall brought up to you when he said, come in and coach? Like, what was the thing besides accountability? What was it specifically that said, hey, this is a business opportunity for us. This is what we're going to be able to help Americans and people all over the world do?
Well, he said initially, I have a financial literacy curriculum that I want you to look at. And I had already done a lot of research about financial literacy. So I looked at, and there's some fantastic programs out there. There's this like a cute little lemonade stand program that's like an entrepreneurial program where they have to like write business plans on like a lemonade stand, like different things like that. I thought he was talking about for inner city kids. So I kind of come in, like not really knowing what the heck I was getting myself into and sit down and listen to this presentation. And I was like, oh, Marshall just needs me to be there. So like, I'm just going to show up. And so I went, I listened, and I was kind of like, wait a minute, what? And I don't really learn that well in that type of environment. And there was a lot of people around. So especially with having a political background, I'm always like scanning a room and like, who's got what kind of angle coming at me. So I was just sort of like, what in the world is happening right now? And then I went in later and met with the team when it wasn't like a big group and started to learn and hear from them about, we're on a mission to educate 1 million families about their finances and turn 1,000 people into millionaires, which has never been done before. And so
I love that.
leave it to Marshall Falk to set a big goal. He's like, I think this is a good goal. How do you feel about this? He calls me Tink. So he's like, what do you think? Like Tinkerbell. And he's like, what do you think about this, Tink? And I was like, yeah, I like it. Like, this is
help 1 million families. Say it again.
Help 1 million families be educated about their finances and turn 1,000 people into millionaires.
That is the best goal I've heard all day.
Yeah.
So that was the mission.
Yeah. So he was like, all right, I think we can do this. And so I sat down, started to learn about the financial literacy piece and really about like breaking it down in a simple way. Because most big banks, credit card companies, all these financial institutions, like they have an angle. And whatever you want to say over the last 3 years, at the very least, I think everybody at some point is now starting to question things that they didn't maybe question before. And that to me is one of the most important things because there is an angle, even our government has an angle about, there's a reason why there's no financial literacy in schools. And so everybody's kind of taken their angle on it. And so, really to like sit down and look at the basic concepts that we could teach people so that they can build on that. Because everyone has this preconceived notion, like I've got to have this much money before I can start to invest, or I need to be able to have $250,000 in assets before I can learn anything about it, or where do I go, or all these different questions that people have in their minds about, what they want to create, how they create it, and what they, it's kind of like when you say, oh, when I get to X weight, I will start doing this. When in reality, you need to start flexing that muscle immediately. Mm-hmm. And so once I saw that, I was like, this is really basic. And a lot of people could understand this. And then I started to research the financial markets. And it's like, wait a minute, the financial services sector is a $114 trillion business.
Whoa.
It is the largest economic sector in the country. And it's larger than the next two combined, which are retail and real estate. And we're only serving like 1% of the population. So, from a business perspective, I was like, hold on, wait. Like, we're only serving 1% of the population and we're doing $114 trillion. Now, granted, it's the top echelon.
Sure.
And just like any business that is taking off right now, you know this, franchising, like it's all about distribution. And so, and the economy of scale. So if I learned anything from my MBA, I was like, there's something here, taking this out to the masses. And whether they're able to save $100 or $50 a month, there's still a lot of money to be made here and a lot of people that need to be empowered and educated. And so that's why, you know, Dave's one of our business partners as well. So we're like, okay, got it. Make a lot of money, help a lot of people, have a lot of fun. We're here for that. Okay, let's do that.
Well, I saw a stat that the top two richest people, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, or is it Bezos and Elon Musk, have more wealth than 50% of Americans, the bottom 50 combined, which plays exactly into what you're just saying, which is even if we help the masses take control of that financial literacy, there's that opportunity for them to get ahead. And it doesn't have to be monumental. I mean, the 1,000 people into millionaires is an amazing goal, because the more millionaires, the better. Because I think what a lot of people fail to understand is, and I was there when I was broke out of law school, no money, living paycheck to paycheck. Thinking about becoming a millionaire is so far from the cards that stock market and all these other opportunities just didn't feel real to me. They didn't feel like they were obtainable. It didn't make sense. But to your whole thing that from Dave, you know, help a lot of people, have a lot of fun, and make a lot of money. You can't do the first two, help a lot of people and have a lot of fun, unless you make a lot of money. Making a lot of money gives you the freedom and the ability to do all these things. And so if we all start focusing on those, and there are steps we can all take, which is why I'm so excited to have you here today, because part of our show is to really inspire others to do and take that immediate decisive action. They don't have to wait until they lose weight to start exercising or running, or make a $250,000 before I can start investing. There are things we can do right now today. And that's what your whole program is about, right? Is giving those actionable immediate steps and in helping everyone get access to this information, which is readily available, but not clearly explained. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because people don't necessarily know what source to trust. And like you said, it seems somewhat unattainable. Like one of those things where it's just like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to rob from Peter to pay Paul, or, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make my cell phone bill payment this week. So the thought of like saving money sounds really, you know, monumental, especially if you have kids and things, other people that are depending on you, can really create a lot of anxiety when it comes to finance. And a lot of us were taught growing up not to talk about money. So that's what it was in my household. Yeah. You know, we don't talk about money. Yes, it's rude. You don't ask people how much money they make. You don't talk about finances. My mom still doesn't talk about finances with me. I'm like, hi, I can talk to thousands of people about their money, but not my mother. Okay, got it. Check. If you're watching, Mom, we're coming for you. But, you know, it's really, there are some small things that you can do to level the economic playing field. And I feel like after COVID started was really, I mean, if I could have planned the perfect storm for our business, I mean, I know there was a lot of people that suffered during COVID, but our business went crazy. I was working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. So I didn't get to take part in the Great American Vacation, but I was freaking, you know, nose to the grindstone. Marshall and I were grinding on Zoom all day, every day.
Well, major crisis is where the most growth can happen. I mean, when everything is booming and everyone's doing well, it's hard to stand out and be different. It's hard to find those opportunities. And I think, you know, a crisis like COVID, the Great American Vacation, was an opportunity for so many to actually get ahead, right? Because the world was paused. And when the world stops and you move forward, you gain serious ground, which kind of plays into what you and Marshall did.
Well, and it really just kind of, you know, I mean, hindsight's always 50-50, right? Or 20-20, I guess is how the saying goes. Hindsight's 20-20. You know, Marshall at the time was more of like a figurehead going into COVID. And so he knew it. He learned it. When he went through and got the financial literacy, he was like, wait a minute, I had 2 financial advisors. Nobody taught me any of this. And he's like, I definitely would have done things different had I known some of these things. I would have set my kids up differently. I would have made a lot of different decisions when it came to investments. And so he was bought in But he just had so many other things going on. So he was always on the road, traveling around the country, and all of a sudden, everything came to a screeching halt. You know, and so here we are, just like this, like sitting in office, like, well, what are we going to do now? And I mean, sure enough, it was like, boom. I mean, we didn't even really have to do anything. I mean, I felt like the week after we went on lockdown, it was just like, boom, 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 hit. Our schedules were packed all day. And so he got to really learn the business on a different level. And, you know, our relationship just got even that much stronger because we were together 24/7 trying to, you know, grow this thing and trying to grow our outlets. And that's really when we were like, okay, we need a bigger distribution than what we're doing right now. So if we're going to help 1 million families, then we got to get some more boots on the ground over here. And there is a major shortage of financial professionals in this country. So, and the average age of financial services professionals, 63 years old.
63?
Yeah. And they're white males. And so, no offense.
No, none taken.
The ones
I'm not 63.
But, you know, we were like, wait a minute. You know, they don't look like Marshall. They don't look like me. We're going through the largest wealth transfer in our nation's history right now. And by 2032, women will be the primary holders of wealth in this nation for the first time ever.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, it will be incredible because it's happening, and there are no women that are sitting down who look like, you know, to educate our sisters on what to do with their money. And so, you know, when you look at equality, which, you know, Marshall and I have always been big philanthropists. That's is our bond, is that we always knew that we got to lift up the guy behind us.
Yep.
And we did it by doing handouts instead of hand ups. Now we give a hand up. We educate people, teach them how to fish by understanding how money works. And so we just kept seeing over and over again. It was like the pandemic was happening, and then George Floyd. And when we talked about his communities where he grew up, it was like, well, you know, the big differentiator in here is the lack of financial knowledge for people to get the economic prosperity to get themselves out of these environments.
Yep.
So it was like every single time we just kept we turned around, and it was like there was a new reason for us to strengthen our resolve and keep going. And, you know, I mean, it's just been so rewarding to be able to take this out to the masses, not just from like the actual financial literacy point, but also from the business standpoint, because Marshall and I are both entrepreneurs and business people. And so I know you're smiling because you're like, me too.
No, it warms my heart because I think everyone is, whether or not they start a company or not. I think everybody is an entrepreneur of their own life and a business owner of their own career. Whether you work with the team or you start the team and have to get people to work with you or for you, you know, that whole concept, everyone who brings that mindset to what they do. So I smile because that's my thesis in life, and I try to educate, and I didn't have to say anything to you, and you just said it. So I was like,
oh, yeah.
There's a validator.
Glad I could tee that up.
Yes,
for
thank you.
But I mean, I agree with you. I think that we are naturally born entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, the way that we have our school system and everything else set up in this country, we beat the entrepreneurship out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have institutionalized people to be systematic followers of direction, show up on time, like our school system, sit in rows, like do everything as you're supposed to be doing. And we beat the creativity out of you. And so, you know, really being able to, and people attack our business when we're going to open a new office, and they attack our business as if they're employees. It's wild.
Yeah.
You know, where we're like, okay, you got to think like an entrepreneur. You got to start looking at numbers. We got to start doing this. You know, you actually own this. You can create millions for yourself and other people, by the way. So you're actually helping people, giving them a necessary thing that they need, and really like pursuing your dream life. And the cool thing is now with Zoom, we can do it from anywhere. You know, we don't need to have acai in a storefront in order to be able to deliver something to someone. I mean, I can be sitting in Cabo San Lucas and taking some information from you and presenting you a financial product that's going to change your life. And, you know, like and then head back to the beach 5 minutes later. It's like, that's the beauty of, of where we're going and what we're doing and what we're creating together.
So before I get too far ahead into the practical, there's something you said, and I want to go back to, and you mentioned that's the reason they don't teach financial literacy in school. I want to know what that reason is.
I mean, I don't really want to get into conspiracy theories. However, what I will say is that knowledge is power, as you know. And so watching the way these institutions operate, I mean, you would think that we would be teaching people the basics. Like, at the very least, okay, you're going to get a job at 18 or 22, depending on if you go to college or not, and you want to retire at this age. So you need to be saving this much every month in order to get you to the retirement life of your dreams. At the bare minimum.
Sure.
And we don't do any of that. Like, never in life does somebody sit you down and go, you should probably save this much a month. And people are completely unrealistic about it. I mean, you wouldn't even believe. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm saving $200 a month and I want to get $12,000 a month when I retire. I'm like, that is statistically impossible over here. Like, unless you're saving X amount of dollars every month, which is more than you make this month. And so knowing that, and knowing that a lot of these financial institutions mystify money. They make you think you have to sit down with somebody who has 18 different letters behind their name in order for them to teach you about how money works.
Do you think they even know what all those letters stand for? Because I swear when I look at some of them, it's like there's 9 letters in there.
Right. 3 lines worth. You're like, I don't even. Okay, cool. So yeah, obviously that's going to make you that much better. I promise. But no, I mean, I don't think they know what it means.
But to your point, there's a reason for that, right? Because in business, you need to create a mousetrap. Mm-hmm. And the business of financial services, if I don't need them, then how do they provide that service and monetize it? So I understand that part, but I still want to better guess, why would our curriculum want to not put this as, we take math, we take science, we take an English, we take a foreign language? Shouldn't taking care of, I mean, America is a capitalistic society. Our economy is built on spending money, capitalism.
Right.
Shouldn't we empower people to make more money so we can spend more money? Like, that's what I just don't understand when I watch my children go through school, and I'm like, when are they going to teach them this?
Right. And like good debt versus bad debt, all these different things. But, I mean, unfortunately, we are a capitalist society. And so when you're uneducated, it makes you more malleable. And so, I mean, we've been going through this great technological revolution, I would argue, probably since like Napster was really sort of the beginning of it all.
Nice Napster plug.
And so, I mean, I don't even know if Napster's still out there, but it was, Napster revolutionized the music industry.
Yep.
Forever, for our whole lives growing up, we were dictated to what was going to be the hit, what we were listening to. And, they made literally instant megastars. You don't really see that many megastars anymore. I mean, the megastars that exist today are sort of residual from, back in the day. But it's very much the Wild Wild West. There's a level playing field, and people get their music out in a variety of different mediums. And the record labels were not happy about any of it. They own the radio stations. They paid the DJs. The FCC got involved a little bit and started to regulate things and limit how much you could pay DJs and the radio stations for the number of times they played your song and things. But it was very much, people thought like, I mean, maybe everybody would have still been into Elvis. Who knows? But, I mean, at that time, everything was very rigged. And so we're now starting to see the man behind the curtain as social media and different outlets start to really shed light on how things are happening. And I think the financial services sector is still pretty archaic. I mean, like I said, we don't have enough financial advisors. They're all 63 years old. They like having their power and control over your money. When people don't have knowledge, they're very malleable and they can do whatever. It's like, okay, all I know is that I've been sold this lifestyle that I need to have the fancy purse and the clothes. And, I guess I got to get a credit card to do this. And so we have done a really good job teaching our country that it's like, okay, now you got to go to college 4 years. You're going to have to take a loan out in order for you to do that. So you're already in debt before you even have a job. And then when you graduate, you're going to have this great life. Well, guess what? You graduate and it's like, wait, I'm making $35,000 a year. This blows. Like, so now I've got all these expenses. And I thought in my mind that if I got to the end of the rainbow, the 4 years out of college, that I was going to be, this Jeff Fenster over here, CEO, whatever. Meanwhile, you get hired in the file room over at your first job. You're like, okay, wait a second. And so you take out a credit card so you can hang out with your friends because in your mind, you're the only one who's not making it, right? All your buddies got a really good job and they're making a lot of money because we've all been taught not to talk about anything. So instead of having an open, honest conversation, everybody's out here fronting like they know, like they're making good money. Meanwhile, they're getting more in debt. They're miserable because they're like, wow, I'm not really fulfilled with this file room job making $35,000 a year and robbing Peter to pay Paul and barely making it every year. So I'm going to do what America tells me that I should do, and I'm going to get married and buy a house and go into more debt. So now I've got my student loan payment, my mortgage payment, my credit card payment that I'm still living on because I got married and I was trying to impress my girlfriend over here, or I'm trying to impress the guy, which means I got to have the nails and the tanning and the waxes and the fake boobs and all the things. And so now we're in even more debt. And guess what? We're not fulfilled.
Yep.
And so we're looking for something else. So we're going to do what seems really logical to everyone in this country and have a baby. And guess what? Those things cost a lot of money. So now you
need a bigger car now, too.
Right. You need a bigger car. You need a bigger house. You need okay, and we got to pay to send this kid to school, and I don't really, and the baby formula and the diapers and, all the things, and now my marriage is on the rock. I'm shocked. I can't believe that that's happening to you. And so we have perpetuated this cycle. Who has time to figure out about money at this point? You're so busy buying into what everyone has been selling us, commercialism and capitalism, that you don't necessarily have time to go figure out about money or what, oh, and you want me to be saving $800 a month when I only make $6,000?
But I'll say that problem you just outlaid, it's true whether you make $30,000 a year or $1 million a year, because when the year I made my very first $1 million, I was young, dumb, and blew it all. And my dad looked at me like I was a lunatic. And I was like, I don't even know how it happened. I honestly didn't. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have a clue. I didn't realize, in my head, I thought, if I did it this year, I'll make 10x this next year. And so I obviously wanted to show out and do all the things and bought a bunch of stupid stuff. But I wasn't having my money work for me in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of my peers who make more money than I do still live paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter how much you make, because without the education, without that knowledge of what to do with money, you can pour as much money in the bucket as you want. If there's a hole in the bottom, it's gonna pour out. Right. Yeah. And I saw another crazy stat. The largest number of millionaires in this country are teachers.
I have not heard that stat, but that would not necessarily surprise me.
And it's because they're educators. They focus on knowledge. They're a little bit more probably conservative because they make less and they are more curriculum driven. But that is the largest profession of millionaires in the country.
Interesting.
I mean, I saw it. I'm trusting it to be true.
I'm definitely going to go look it up and look into it. And, there's something to be said with, at the very least, even if teachers aren't paid necessarily what they're worth, they, for the most part, have a pension. And
yes.
Most people do not have that anymore. And so, we had this, great transfer that happened where we went from, our parents and grandparents got pension, Social Security, and then a little bit of savings, the three-legged stool, and that's how they paid for retirement. Well, Social Security, that's anybody's guess if we're going to have it. It's set to run out, we may bail it out, but we've been bailing out things right and left right now, so I don't know how much money we'll have left at that point. Pensions are a way, they went by the wayside many, many years ago. Some people still have them, but for the most part, no. And then we don't know how to save.
Correct.
So, and everybody's in massive amounts of credit card debt. So, looking at 64% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck.
64%.
Mm-hmm. And 85% of those are women.
Well, that's going to change by 2034.
Mm-hmm.
And through the hard work that you guys are up to.
That's right.
So help me understand. Okay, I'm listening to this. I realize I have a major hole in my bucket. I don't know how to save money. I don't know how to make money work for me. It's a black box. I'm scared. I have no knowledge. And if I Google it, of course, I'm going to see a million ads and 18 different ideas on what I should do. What would you tell me if I came to you and we were hanging out at a bar and I didn't buy you a drink and I said, step one, what do I need to do? What is the identifying you have a problem is the first problem. I identified it. I don't know anything about financial literacy. I'm trying to learn. I don't want to make the same mistakes everyone else are making. What would you tell me to do?
So it's called the 7 money milestones. So it's like a basic roadmap where obviously the first step is education. You have to understand a little bit about money. And so we present it to people. We talk about 3 basic concepts. We find your retirement number. And then we look at cash flow, budgeting, emergency funds, proper protection, building and preserving wealth, creating additional streams of income. So we take everybody through the 7 money milestones. And, there's not a one-size-fits-all formula. We take everybody through the process, but sometimes you got to know what the players are on the field in order to call the play. So, I know nothing about football, but, every now and again I can throw out a sports reference. But it's so depending on what people's goals and dreams are, it can be really different. Some people want to leave their kids with $10 million. Other people are like, beat it, kid. Like, you're on your own. I've heard it all. So, but I think the first step is getting knowledge. And let me back that up. The first step is committing. So when I would do one-on-one and team coaching, I always said I can only coach commitment. Because competency is easy. Finding out how to do something, finding the process. You can, follow Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman. You can come see us, whatever it is. Like it's just like dieting. If you pick a diet, you're probably going to see a result.
They do say the best diet is the one you follow.
And there's truth to that. Mm-hmm. So, once you finally decide to listen and you actually do what your coach tells you to do, then you're probably going to have a result, because they've been doing it for a while. So, the first step is commitment. And then it's really about picking that one thing and following it. So if you're going to sit down with me or Marshall or someone on our team, following the steps and actually doing it, which, as well as I do, there's a reason why there's not that many entrepreneurs in the world or that many fit people, because most people don't want to put in the work day in and day out and be consistent and committed and persistent and following when nobody else is watching. And that's why, to your point about the success formula, it's really everything, doesn't matter what it is, starts with commitment.
Yep.
Because once you're committed, you will do whatever it takes to get there, no matter what.
Okay, so I'm committed. I want to take control of my financial literacy. I don't want to be like the 63% living paycheck to paycheck, but I don't make a lot of money. Is there a book you recommend to read? Is there a website other than your own that you would recommend to say, listen, we're going to help you, right? Obviously, coming to you and Marshall, and everyone should. I've known them for years. This is the group. They are also going to make over 1,000 millionaires. Mm-hmm. So I'll let that be you. But assuming that's step 2, because first I'm sitting in a bar with you, is there something I can do tonight? Something I can actually start? Because part of my success formula is taking immediate decisive action. And it's something you had hit on actually earlier in when you were explaining something, which is if I take one little step and I win stack and I do it today, it might lead to me doing something more tomorrow. What is that first thing I can do?
So there are a few good books out there. We actually have our own book. It's called How Money Works. And we're at the end of this month, you'll be the How Money Works for Women book will be available. It's authored by Sharon Lechter. So I know, like if you know anything about money, you read any money books, that woman is involved in all the good ones. So, she's partnered with Napoleon Hill and Robert Kiyosaki. And so she wrote the How Money Works for Women's book for us. So we're really excited to launch that. So, I, of course, always recommend people start there because it's written at a 5th grade level. So for people who don't know anything too fancy schmancy or want to read something really long, because oftentimes it's not that interesting to people, or it can be challenging if you don't know. It's just like feels overwhelming. And so, I mean, I always recommend that book. But then, I like, there's so many books, but I mean, I would say Rich Dad, Poor Dad is like such a classic. I mean, you can't, it's really hard to not, to make it through any sort of financial success and not have read that book, and also Think and Grow Rich. So, those two books, if I was going to send somebody somewhere, I would say, read those. But I mean, I do think that they're they weren't exciting for me. And like, I do this, I didn't want to sit down and read those. I kind of forced myself to read it. So I can't say that it was necessarily intriguing, but I was committed to it, where I was like, okay, I'm going to read this anyways. And this is where I'm going to start.
Those two books, and this is not, we didn't plan this and I didn't know you were going to say it, but those two books I read, and they were probably, Think and Grow Rich for a different reason, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad was probably the impetus for me to realize I needed to do something different financially. And nobody told me. It was just, that is the number one most promoted book, I think, to get started. Like when I talk to people who are successful financially, it somehow starts right back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So that is a definite, I couldn't agree more that that's a great starting point.
Well, it's a, a pretty basic concept, and talks about the mindset of like what keeps people poor. And so, in my journey, my professional journey, working in inner cities and, trying to figure out like, what is that? I didn't want to find out the it factor that makes people successful like you did. I wanted to find out what makes people poor. Like, why do we create these communities? And because if we know why, then we can, eradicate poverty. And so,
well, in a way, it's the same, right? My success formula for me was I wanted to understand what makes successful people successful, because the same reason what makes people poor, it will come to be a formula. Different outcome, a different, we're putting different digits in to form a different formula, but the setup of it is the same, right? Because if you can find the commonality between what is making people poor, you can change it. You can impact. And for me, it was, I wanted to be successful. And I believe that if I talk to enough smart people who have done it, I'll find that formula for me, and then I can duplicate it. And then fortunately, I figured it out in my own way. And now I want to inspire and help others. I hope I can make people rich and millionaires, but I'm more on a broad spectrum of trying to help inspire and others become successful, because I feel that there's illiteracy around that too in today's world. In today's too much information, that's the downside of social media, in my opinion, and everybody being, everyone is the media. Everyone can push any information out there. There's so much information now that the truth or the right thing can be drowned out just because in the noise. Like, how do you find the needle in the haystack? And so I think it's similar, even though we're attacking different problems and from a different angle. I think fundamentally we're doing the same thing.
Well, 100%. And, you made me think of something when you were just talking about that, because it's interesting that I've always been on a life journey to eradicate poverty since I was little. I lost my father when I was 5 years old. And so my mom was a single mother that was like thrust back into the workplace. And my dad actually had a life insurance policy, but it was a small one and not enough for her to survive on. And she wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom. And so all of a sudden, we have no dad. My mom's back at work. We're in daycare. And at the time, daycare was not in my community anyways. Everyone was a stay-at-home mom. We were the only family that didn't have a dad. And so I watched my mother struggle through this. And I was like, that's why I went into politics. Because I was like, I want to do something that helps single moms succeed. And so I became more and more clear about wanting to eradicate poverty and help these communities. And so I actually put together like a poverty eradication plan before Marshall and I got into this space. And so I was like, I'm going to do this in my spare time. Like, I want to, because everyone talks about like how poor schools create poor neighborhoods poor neighborhoods create poor schools. And I was like, no, I think that poor schools create poor neighborhoods. And so when we're not dumping the resources into these schools, and like, what are we really creating? So I had this great idea. I was like, I want to start in a small school and go and put together plans that show people exactly what to do. Just like I mean, you work out, I work out, like just like putting together a fitness plan. Like you would do anything else, a business plan, a fitness plan, a finance plan, whatever it may be. I was like, they need a plan. And I used to compare it to the Fidelity commercial, with the little line. They're like, what's that line? That's my pathway to retirement, And I was like, oh, I want to do that for these people in these poor communities, get them some mentorship, and see what resources are available. And if we can't, and then do a gap analysis. Let's see what's working, what's not working. What do they need more of? Who's double dipping in services? And let's see if we could actually eradicate poverty in one school.
Yep.
And then duplicate it. And so that was always kind of on the back of my mind. And then, fast forward, here I am with Marshall. We thought that we were going to do this with inner city schools. And next thing we know, we're like, oh, the whole country needs this. And it's a great business opportunity. We can do all the things together. So instead of just giving money, we can educate people, give them the hand up, and, we can make a lot of money and have a lot of fun ourselves. So, it's been kind of an interesting journey, the way that I manifested that and spoke it into existence. Not at all in the manner that I thought it was going to happen, but, it just kind of all fell into place, and it's been just a beautiful journey.
So with the shiny object syndrome that a lot of us have, right? And we lack that discipline and commitment because every day there's a commercial with a new Apple Watch, or Amazon is now, Amazon is dangerous for a lot of people because we don't have to go to a mall and it's like, oh, I'm busy today. How am I gonna? We don't have to. I can literally buy something as I'm sitting here talking with you. What advice would you give me or anybody to say, hey, I don't have the discipline with managing my finances. I do have that shiny object syndrome. Obviously, it's very hard to cut it all off cold turkey, right? So being that we're cutting this back to the 5th grade level, what would you say? Is it okay if I save money every other month to start? Can I buy the shiny object so long as I do one or two other things? Is there any just little practical tip you could give me to help me get going in the right side?
Yeah, I think, after you take some time and educate yourself, know some of the basics, I think budgeting is really the key. And so you would be shocked how many people have no idea how much money they spend on anything. And we'll sit down, go through the budget. I'm like, how much money do you spend on food this month? $300. I'm like, there's 6 of you in your family. You live in San Diego. I'm like, a week, you mean? Oh, no, a month. I'm like, oh, okay. Total disconnect from how much they're actually spending. And there's some really great apps out there that you can get that are free that will import all your transactions. So I like Mint, which is by Intuit. It's a free app, and you can start to set some really basic goals for yourself. And so I remember the first time I did it, and I was like, I'm a girl, I go out on dates, I don't really pay for that much, but then I got my dining out bill, and it was $1,500 for the month. I was like, get out of here right now. What is happening? No way I'm spending that much money dining out. So it was a whole shift. So it's all, it's back to that whole knowledge thing where it's everybody is not really connected to what they're spending and where. And so once even our taxes, they're like, oh, nobody wants to do the itemized deduction, right? So unless you're maybe like us, but so the general public who have a vested interest in keeping stupid, they just take a general deduction because they're too lazy to put together an itemized deduction, which if they did itemize, they might actually see some of these numbers. So I would say that's the first step because it's free. Mm-hmm. And so you can do it, start to see things, and then making it, if you're in a relationship or a family, making it a family game. So where you're talking openly about the goals and everybody's working towards it. So okay, we're going to save $100 and then we're going to get to you can have whatever you want for dinner or, whatever it may be, whether that's once a week or twice a week. And because, it's hard when you're a parent and the kids are like, Mom, can I please have this? And you want to give them everything, especially if you have means, where you're just sort of okay, you're talking about your friends who make more than you do. And, you just want to give them everything. And so really involving the family in it, because that's developing good money habits at an early age where everyone's able to sit down and be like, oh, okay, we're working towards saving $10,000 this year. And, then your kids are like, okay, well, how much should I be saving? If you guys are saving 10,000, should I save, $100 a share.
Yep.
And so starting those healthy conversations early, so it's not like, oftentimes we'll have a one head of household and they take on the burden and they're stressed out, because the wife or the husband's like, but I want this and let's go on vacation and let's do this, versus getting everybody involved. So just like if you're, I've been on reinvigorated in my fitness kick lately. And so over the last 5 years, I have released about 70 pounds. And so I literally was looking at the picture of myself the other day. I was like, I don't even know who that girl is. Like, where the heck did she come from? And, it's been gradual, and there's so many little decisions that I've had to start to notice about myself and make other decisions so that I could really, release that and create a healthy lifestyle. So, no, you're not all of a sudden going to be, like, let's say $5,000 this month. Probably not going to happen when you're in the negative. But doing some budgeting and making it a game and being, even talking to some of your friends if you're single, like, okay, this is what I want to create. Because so many times people are actually fronting to people that are their friends. Like, they might have been friends for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And everyone's trying to pretend like they're doing more than they should, instead of saying like, hey guys, this is what I want to create in my life. I want to be able to save this much money. I want to save this for retirement. I want to be able to buy a house. I want some investment properties. And as well as I do, having a constructive friend group is really helpful, where it's like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I want to do that too. Like, these were some of my goals. And you might learn from them, but instead of like, hey, who can take the most shots at the bar on Friday night? It's like, let's go and actually talk about what our goals are and be present to it, because who you surround yourself with is probably the most important thing that you do.
Oh, for sure. The conversations you have create ideas. And today I'm thinking investment properties and businesses and stocks and bonds and crypto and all different financial opportunities and how to make money work for me, because that's what my friends, that's what we talk about. We're not talking about how many shots at the bar. If that's what we were talking about, I wouldn't even be thinking about these concepts. And to your point, it's that. But the second thing is, there's that saying, and I might butcher it a little, but hard times create moderate times, or hard times create good times create hard times, meaning if you are broke, you're going to work really hard. If you are able to empower your children, they're going to probably make more money than you because they grew up in poverty and they didn't want that life. And then if you become really rich and have abundance, it's only 1 or 2 generations later before that money is lost, because there's no value to money. And in a microcosm, and I'm a little guilty of it, I have a big gap between my kids. There's a 6-year gap. And my oldest daughter, we were broke coming out of school, not having anything. And she has a much sounder idea of money, because there were times where we were eating peanut butter and jelly sandwich twice a day and borrowing money from my parents or in-laws to pay the bills. My youngest one got aged a little bit more abundance. And to your point, it's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm lazy. Yeah, just order DoorDash. It's fine. And we're now looking at her as she's 11, and she thinks money grows on trees. Yeah. Like, my wife literally said to me, we need to do something, otherwise we're going to have to support her the rest of her life. Like, she has zero concept of money. And we're right. now trying to figure out how to re-educate my 11-year-old to have the values around it, because we're in a different financial position than we were with the first one. And I can see it in just a 6-year gap with 2 kids living in the same house. I can't imagine how extrapolate that out. And so that's why I was really excited to have you come today, because not only do I want to help the listeners, this is selfish, right? The beauty of the show is I want to learn, and we always need to be learning. And that success formula that I think is evident, and everyone has a version of it, but we all have one. Success means every aspect of life, whether it's financial, how you look, and your health and wellness, your businesses, your relationships. And Kaizen is one of our core values at all my companies, as well as my own in my success formula, which is to get 1% better every day. What is that little thing we can do today? Because so often, if I'm sitting at home living paycheck to paycheck, I'm broke, I don't know anything about money, and I make $20 an hour, and I think it's just unobtainable for me to elevate my financial wherewithal, and I don't even want to start learning because I'm exhausted working 2 jobs and doing all these things. So I don't do anything. But there's little steps we can take, and if I do a little step today, maybe I save $1 today. And maybe tomorrow it's $1.50. But eventually that's going to add up if we add 50 cents or $1 or $10 or $100 or whatever it is. And if we gamify it. And I think collectively as a community, we need to give the hand up to each other that way without going the big gaps, right? Because I think there's a big tranche of people who are ready to take the next step. But there's the other group, and that's, the impoverished, truly impoverished neighborhoods. It's hard. I can't imagine how the barriers that you and Marshall are having to cross to not only wake them up to the fact that this is their hand up, this is that step, but then getting them to understand what that is, right? Especially in today's world where, to your point, it's the largest transition of wealth. And the middle class is going away. There's the haves and the have-nots, and it's definitely separating very quickly with technology and all these tools. Is there anything that you think, I guess, can you explain what you see happening with the middle class shrinking and the economy diversified for rich versus poor, and what you and Marshall are seeing with that, or what you guys are working towards to kind of help bridge that? Because I think you can't go from poor to rich overnight. Right. You've got to move up the ladder.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about the middle class, actually, because I'm a student of political science, and my first life was working in politics. And so politicians talk a lot about the middle class, and sometimes at odds. But it's interesting because, I mean, we deal with, we serve everybody. So we have a lot of middle class, a lot of upper middle class, and a lot of, very wealthy people. And so seeing the mindset in all of them, and it's not necessarily indicative of what class you're going to be in, right? So like we have a lot of people who are athletes who make a lot of money, but they still have a very impoverished mindset, and they treat money like that. So there's that piece of it from a financial standpoint, is like changing the mindset around money, because it doesn't matter if you have a little or a lot. How you grew up can often dictate how you hold on to it or don't hold on to it, and how you spend it. But as far as the middle class goes, so the middle class is the backbone of this country. And everything that we do is really like predicated on the fact that the middle class is going to follow the rules. Because the wealthy can kind of afford not to. They can, pay an attorney or pay a fine or get, I mean, if you're, Elon Musk and you get a speeding ticket, like, do you care? No. It's like, whatever, I mean, my wine last night cost more than this speeding ticket. Like, you don't care. The impoverished communities don't care because I shouldn't say they don't care, but they have access to free services or help, if they can't necessarily make something happen. So you get into trouble, they're going to give you a public defender, whatever it may be. They're going to put you on a small payment plan. You don't necessarily have to pay fines and fees and follow the rules. The middle class has to. Because if they don't pay their taxes or do whatever, I mean, we are a society that's based on what I would call having something at stake, an at-stake society. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there's a consequence. And so the middle class, if they get sued or they get a speeding ticket, I mean, it might put them back for the year if you get a really expensive speeding ticket, I mean, you might be living that close to the wire that you're really going to struggle because you've budgeted down to the penny. And so, there are so many unfunded mandates and burdens that are put on the middle class. And I think it's the most misunderstood class that there is. As well as I do, that the middle class is where all the entrepreneurs really sit.
Yeah.
And so small business owners are entrepreneurs, and they all, for the most part, sit in the middle class. I mean, there are some that are wealthy and, are wealthier than most, but by most standards, they sit in the middle class. And so, that there is kind of a war right now on the middle class between some of the political agendas that we're seeing, taxation, access to services, unfunded mandates requiring different things from business owners and people of a certain income level, and from whatever insurance to this to that it may be. And then here's the real kicker, and this has been something this is hot off the press, Jeff. What we've been noticing is that during COVID, the federal government allowed you to take money out of your 401k without paying a penalty. You didn't have to pay, you still had to pay the taxes, but you didn't have to pay the penalty. And so a lot of people did that. So we've been noticing that Marshall and I were just having this conversation the other day. I said, have you noticed we really haven't been doing that many rollovers lately? And he's like, yeah. And at first we were just kind of oh, well, I guess that's what it is, we just don't see that many. And then we started having a conversation about it. I was like, wait a minute. You realize that we allowed these people to take their money out, which quite frankly was not enough to begin with anyways. In some cases we're talking about $20,000, $50,000, but that was the middle class who needed to take that out to be able to survive because they maybe didn't qualify for some of the benefits during COVID. And so, it is, as much as I say there's a war on the middle class, and I agree with you that it is diminishing, I don't think that it can ever go away completely, because otherwise you have anarchy because you don't have anybody that follows the rules.
That's a very interesting perspective on that. I don't think I've heard that one yet. But I think you're right. There has to, obviously the middle class is the middle. So there will be a middle. It's just with how, I guess, we think about it. And to your point, I never thought of it from the top and the bottom maybe don't look at the world the same way because of the different access or whether it's to social programs or to just unlimited resources, the rules maybe are less prevalent. Because the middle class is the hardest one to break through. If you're in that class, you're not going to self-sabotage to go down to the bottom to take advantage of social programs. That's done if you're in that situation. And you probably may or may not know how to ladder up and to get outside of it. And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about with entrepreneurship as well, which to your point is the majority of small business owners and entrepreneurs, they are in the middle class. They want to be in the top. It's glorified. Social media has made it sexy, right? We see the Elon Musks. It's very hard. And that's part of the impetus for what my mission is to give everyone access to the knowledge of what is the formula I can follow to become successful. And success is obviously personal, right? For you and Marshall right now, it's to help millions of families get financial literacy and turn 1,000 people into millionaires. That's an objective number. We know. Are we at 999? Once we hit 1,000, we're having a party, and I'm sure it's going to be the next 1,000. But for a lot of people, success is a blend and those traits. And just getting this conversation with you, I'm hearing what you guys are doing, and I'm seeing that your formula is very similar in a lot of ways to my own. Just you're applying it on a different landscape. So this has been awesome for me because financial literacy is something I'm working on all the time. I actually just it's probably the number one Google thing I've spent learning new things, and also asking ChatGPT for financial things in today's economy, right? And how to take advantage, because in the last 3 years, we've had so many major events to trigger ups and downs in just the economy and soft landing, hard landing. Are we going to be in a recession? Free handouts for everybody during the heart of COVID, and everyone has too much money and no one's paying bills, to now, oh no, what are we going to do? There's not going to be jobs, and unemployment's at an all-time low, and inflation's at an all-time high, but we need to bring that down. And it's, as someone who's not an expert, but improving my financial literacy, it's scary. It's hard to understand it all. And to know that, what you and Marshall are doing and to have Virtuity as a resource is something. So for the listeners, they're sitting here, they're like, okay, this is exciting. I want to talk to Tyree. I want to talk to Marshall. I'm going to take that next step. what do you recommend they do? How do they connect with your firm, with you guys? What do you recommend is the process?
Yeah, I mean, we try to be out there as much as we possibly can. So doing shows like this, obviously me, Marshall, and Dave are doing Clubhouse tomorrow, actually. But I mean, you can find me on social media under Tyree Dillingham under all handles. You can check out our website at fortuity.com. You can obviously reach out to Marshall Falk on all social media channels, and send us a message, show up for something, start to listen and educate yourself. Because you're right, it's definitely some unprecedented times, certainly, and scary to say the least, and exciting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of opportunity available for people. And so this is the time, if there's ever been a time, this is the time to educate yourself and start to get out there, and because there's a lot of money to be made right now. A lot. Well,
you heard it from Tyree. If you want to make more money, definitely reach out to her and Marshall. I can tell you, I've known them for a few years. I've actually been involved with them and would recommend everybody does that. So you can also be informed, because information is power. So thank you, Tyree, for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jeff. This was fun.
This was fun.
Hey everyone, first I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.